In competitive sports, people with egos are difficult to deal with and really annoying. The first episode of Ping Pong the Animation is largely about this issue and these types of people. For starters, the situation is basically that Kon Wenge, a Chinese man who is on the national team, has been flown out to Japan to work with this school that specializes in ping pong, and they want him to be their coach and to bring some talent to the school. So they fly him out there, and he plays. However, the issue is that a lot of these people are just completely beneath his level of play. He's just much, much better than them, so he kind of has a little bit of an ego about it. Similarly, we have our up-and-comers, the main characters, Smile and Peko, with Peko really only being the one with any drive to be the best kind of player, but he still doesn't put in very much effort to that means. He kind of just coasts off his talent. And so Smile and Peko go to see Kon Wenge play. They want to see how good he is and play against him, that kind of thing. They want to see how they match up, kind of, right? And so they go there, and there's no one there, so they start playing on their own. And Kong overhears it and gets curious. And he goes to play them. He wants to play Smile because he knows Smile is the better one of the two at this point, but Smile has no interest in playing, basically. He has no drive, whereas Peko, he has all the drive in the world, even though he doesn't put in very much effort. He really wants to be the best player, so he really wants to play against Kong. However, Kong doesn't want to play against Peko. He knows he's a sloppy player he kind of reads that he's coasted off his talent for a long time. So, despite this, the coach tells him to play anyways. They might as well play a game, right? Give Peko what he wants so much. Smile's not going to play him either way, probably. So, let's look at the two characters, right? So we've got Kong, who has worked very hard and has somewhat of an ego, but not undeservedly, right? He was on the national team for China until he got kicked off for losing an important match or something like that. And we have Peko, who has a large ego, but he hasn't worked very hard on the game. He hasn't practiced that much. He just plays with people and beats the snot out of them for the most part, but, kind of in a small pond. He doesn't play that many good people. But he has maybe even a bigger ego than Kong. He thinks he's kind of the best dude around. It's not the most undeserving thing because he's beaten a lot of people around him, but there's just not that many good people in this small area of Japan. We've got Kong, who has worked through the game properly, and he has such refined technique. He can control the ball in a ton of ways that he wants. He can give it really powerful topspin, really powerful backspin, and he's got a sinking drive. He's got really strong backhand and forehand. He has all this technique down. Peko is good at some of these things, but he doesn't have any of this technique the same. His spins are terrible. He doesn't know how to return spins very well. He kind of just plays based off instinct. He hasn't really tried, honestly, to learn the game. So I think no matter the game, really, you have to learn how to play it properly. You have to get this technique. If you don't, you're going to hit a road wall at some point. There's people who are successful who don't play normal techniques. They don't play by the book. But this comes only after understanding how to play these ways and what the counterplay is. And that's how they make their unorthodox styles make sense. Peko does not have this trait. You might think he's just an unorthodox player who plays weird, and so it doesn't matter if he doesn't know the techniques, but it really does. He doesn't understand them or how to beat them in the first place. Kong, however, is very resentful that he's come to this country and has to play weak players, right? The thing is, Peko is kind of a target for this anger in front of him. Peko comes in with the benefit of thinking himself nearly an equal of Kong. He wants to play him so bad because he thinks maybe he can beat him, because Peko thinks he's super talented, which he is, but he's not the same level of player yet at all. And so Kong reads this completely and hates the guy just off his first look, basically. Kong is also partially angry, I think, because he sees himself in Peko, right? Kong also has an ego. He thinks he's better than the people of Japan that are around him, which for the most part, he is a better player, right? But he sees that aspect of himself in Peko. He realizes that Peko is basically a more cartoon version of himself with less skill and less effort. On some level, Kong probably worries that other people see him and Peko as the same type of person, or that they're the same, boasting about how good they are without having put in that much effort. And he's worried that people will lump him and Peko together. So he wants to prove to himself that they are completely different cases, that Peko is just some idiot who doesn't understand how good he is and hasn't worked hard at all. And Kong really doesn't want to be grouped in with that. Kong wants to work hard and be as good as he possibly can. He doesn't want to be this idiot who thinks he's good at the game but isn't all that. So he hates that aspect of it. Peko is trying to prove that he's actually talented and good, but by thinking that he's a really strong player with this little effort put into practice or playing at all, he kind of trivializes the whole sport without realizing it. To put yourself on the same level as someone who's tried way harder and is way better than you, it kind of makes them feel like you're mocking them, and that's definitely what Kong feels right there. So that's why Kong hates him so much at this point. So going into this, we kind of want to root for Peko because he's a main character and he's a generally fun guy. He plays and his style of play is pretty cool and exciting, and we kind of like it, right? He's a goofy guy that's fun to hang around, but it's just not the same. Personally, I end up rooting for Kong because he really has the moral high ground here. He has a sympathetic position of being estranged from his home country because of his failures, and Peko really deserves the beating for being so arrogant. And so Kong just completely beats down Peko in this brutal scene. He beats him 11-0 perfectly, and he shows the complete difference between the two. Peko just can't return his good mixed up serves, his crazy spin, his drives are so strong, he can't return any of that because he's not that good compared to him. He hasn't learned anything. He hasn't put in the effort to counteract this kind of stuff. And so Kong shows that he's the more dominant player and shows, Peko really isn't fit to play with him. Kong says directly, you don't deserve to stand at the same table as me. And it's a very fucked up thing to say, but he's kind of right. I mean, Peko really deserves it at that point. In the same way, it kind of feels bad because when you criticize him, it kind of feels like you're doing the same thing that Peko is to people that he beats. And while it's not entirely true, it just rubs you off the wrong way, kind of. And so I think this scene is really cool, and this dynamic of players and the issue of ego in this particular way isn't shown very often in sports shows at all. I think it's a very interesting dynamic, which I've definitely experienced before myself, and I think probably any competitive player who is very serious has as well, but isn't talked about as specifically as much. I think it's something you would only really know if you had seriously tried to be competitive at something. So I love that Ping Pong the Animation shows it in such good detail, and for the first episode of the series, I think it's a fantastic way to start off the show. It's a really good starting point for the series, and I think it's a really good springboard for getting us to understand Peko's issues and how he works through them for the rest of the series. Part of the reason I think the show is so amazing. Thanks for watching and have a good one.